Here's a table a friend of mine designed and I guided him over the making. Now in this video I'm going to share the process of designing and making. Well, my name's Jeremy Broun, and if you're new to my channel, I'm a designer maker, and it's been some time since I stood up in front of a student, for instance with COVID, to share my knowledge of woodworking. You know, you'll take your woodworking to a completely new level if you design what you actually make. It's so satisfying making what you design, designing what you make. So over to my friend who I met at the local badminton club. He's got a background in engineering and his name is Tim.
I mean, the whole project started in a way where we had a bit of leftover kitchen worktop, and it's effectively a bit of chipboard and with a laminate on the top, and so the edges need to get dressed up, and so I had again some offcuts from my kitchen which I then used to dress the edges. The inspiration for the table has came from a washing up bowl that my mother used to use when we went camping. So it had basically 4 legs that splayed outwards, and then it took a canvas bag which the bowl then sat in. And so this replicates that idea. The key to it is to make sure this block in the centre is the right size so that all the legs can concertina out, and the top of the table can easily come off. We just undo the 4 screws and then it will concertina up, so it can actually be a flat pack.
Well, there's a lot of triangulation going on there, Tim. What's going on under the top?
What is happening is, as the load comes onto the table, there's more stress around the nut here, and this is why this is tapered to reflect the bending moment in the table itself.
Now, of course, you're an engineer, and here we've got the fusion of a great engineering mind and a great artistic mind.
I guess in some ways, Jez, I kind of come from a background where everything is known to the last millimetre and everything is fully dimensioned, and I can draw in AutoCAD, and that precision I just is the way my mind works. But it's fair to say that as this table developed, it became less precise and was driven more by actually what we actually had, and I guess you could say we had to wing it a little bit on the way to make it all work.
You say everything has to be measured and precise, and yet you mentioned the word that it developed, which kind of means evolved. And I do remember that excellent mock-up you made out of pine and the offset pivots. There was a little bit of brain power involved there, wasn't there, to get that to work? There
was. I mean, I worked out technically how the dimensions would work with this central block, but it's quite a complex 3-dimensional node point, so we actually did a timber mock-up of this central node to make sure the dimensions were actually correct, and so it's fair to say that the mock-up was quite instrumental in giving us the confidence that it would actually work.
Well, when you arrived, Tim, you'd already got a few woodworking skills under your belt, and I remember we had a bit of an issue over the way you marked out the wood and then sawed it and all the rest of it. What would you say you learned?
I think one of the key things was drawing to the cut line in a biro as opposed to a pencil, and then shading the waist side, and then actually making sure that even though I'd cut that piece, that biro line was still there, so I actually knew exactly, and so it gave a great more sense of precision than I would have normally gone to with my woodworking skills.
Yeah, I mean, I think you learned really quickly, but to be honest, you did bring some, how can I say, some old habits that I had to try and undo, and you were naturally a little bit resistant because they were habits, but hopefully you learned. What else would you say that you gained from my teaching input, and also that was satisfying to you?
Well, I guess I'd never had the range of tools that you've got, Jez, and I mean, quite a simple thing was, you know, with the central block itself that we just glued up some pieces of oak, and the tabletop itself was all CNC cut. And I mean, that was quite delightful process, just to wheel an electronic mouse and see.
And in fact, it was an adventure we both shared, because I'm in the middle of building that CNC machine. I haven't a clue about software. I mean, you know far more about software. You mentioned AutoCAD and stuff. And we literally wound it up manually, you know, on the, I think they call it a pendant, and for really basic operations such as skimming. And the block, actually, you used one of my other machines, didn't you?
We used the milling machine to square up the block as well, and that, I mean, what using these machines brings is a very real sense of precision. And I mean, I was always amazed how nicely the top turned out, because everything is just so nice and square, and all the angles are at 90 degrees, and it creates a real sense of precision, having the right tools to the job, really.
Now, it's no mean task getting miters right, because these are quite thick lipping strips.
You're right, Jess. Doing the miters was quite a difficult task, and but I think what we did do, which I thought was I wouldn't have done, is we marked each corner 1, 2, 3 and 4, and we kept every miter to that corner, and so each corner was numbered. So that ensured that when we went back, it actually fitted precisely, whereas I would have probably not done the numbering system, and it wouldn't have fitted so precisely.
Well, all these tips, Tim, really come with experience. I mean, you were kind of learning on the job with, you know, the benefit of me kind of guiding you for some of these tips, like shading waste, cutting on the waste side of the line, leaving the line on until the final sanding. I must admit, I'm really impressed with your finish, because finishing really is a separate art. It can be almost as time consuming as the making. And you wouldn't let me anywhere near the finish. You were quite disgusted at the options I offered you, like polyurethane and all these.
Yeah.
So what did you do with finish?
Well, I started off by taking it down. I think I started on a 60 grit, and then took it down in stages to a 240 grit. But then I find that varnish is effectively sealing a timber, and I feel that, you know, wood should breathe, and so I really wanted an oil to do this, and so I found a culinary oil, which is a French oil, which I just used for the top here and a couple of coats, and it's really brought the grain out beautifully. I was surprised as well when we cut the main legs themselves that they were cut from a oak board. I was trying to get hold of some laminate board, but I couldn't find any, and so this is an oak board. But I was interested how, upon cutting the 4 legs, that the wood itself actually moved and relieved stresses within the wood as we cut it. And so, whereas the board seemed to be a relatively straight board, by the time we cut it into the 4 legs, there was a bit of wander in each of the legs themselves. But I mean, that's not a problem, it's just how timber is. One of the errors I did make, hand on heart, is that this concertina can actually open up in a clockwise direction, and it can also open up in an anti-clockwise direction. And when I first did it, I opened it in the wrong direction, which I think is very anti-clockwise, and I then cut the legs based upon that opening. And so when I came to put it down, I had in fact got all the pieces going in the wrong direction, and I had the feet cut in the wrong direction. I mean, fortunately the legs were extra long at the time, so it wasn't really a problem, and so I then managed to reopen it the other way around and cut the legs to length. The legs themselves are not actually going straight to the centre of the table, they're actually going off to the side of the table, and so the angles of where we recess the leg into the tabletop itself, this angle in fact doesn't actually go to the centre of the table, and it wasn't, and we only really found that out once we'd actually tried a bit of trial and error, and we effectively drew round each leg, we numbered each leg, and then we recessed the legs in using a router.
Because you were going to originally use blocks, weren't you?
I was going to use blocks here, a wooden block, but I think you were right. I mean, you were saying it seemed quite a lumpy solution, really, and the idea of just recessing it down, just a small bit into the tabletop itself, that ensures that as the load comes onto the table, it actually locks in the table itself, and so it's just really got a locator screw. Which again this actually comes down at 90 degrees to the table itself.
Well, Tim, if you were building this again, what would you do different?
I would cut the legs more accurately, because I think I didn't cut those to the line as accurately as I should have done, and I think that would have helped. I think as well, working in oak, particularly in shaping the legs, it's a very tough material to be working in, and I might think about going for more of a softwood for the legs themselves, because it is quite hard work machining through oak itself. But I love the finish of oak, and I love seeing the grain come out, and so I'm very, very pleased with it, and I'm sure it will last me for years.
I'm sure it will. It's a good effort. Well done, Tim.
Thank you, Jez. No, thank you, Jez, for your help and assistance, and I couldn't have done it without you. So,
well, that's nice to hear. So please, if you're watching this, subscribe to my channel, blah blah blah. You know where to press the buttons, and see what is in store for you in the future. Thanks for watching.